Good afternoon and good evening. My name is Efrem Bekele. I'm an Atlas Core Fellow and a Youth Engagement Fellow for Youth Power Through Learning and Evaluation project at Making Sense International. Today we're going to do our 8th webinar with our YouthLead Ambassadors from Brazil and South Africa. So welcome everyone, and for today's webinar, we will virtually travel to Brazil and South Africa to discuss about why women's representation or participation is important in peace building and politics. So women's participation in peace building is very crucial in development of 3 pillars of lasting peace, economic recovery, and social cohesion, and also political legitimacy. And evidence indicates that women's participants in peace processes are usually focused less on post-conflict balances of power and more on a reconciliation process and economic development, education, and transitional justice, which are all critical elements of sustainable peace, of course. But today, our YouthLead ambassadors, Maria, Fernanda, and from Brazil, and Anita from South Africa, will have a conversation about the importance of female representation in peace building process and also challenges to achieve gender equality. So their main goal while doing this webinar will be informing us the gap between the women and men in peace building. They will also discuss the dangers of not having accurate representation of women in peace building. At the same time, they'll give us highlights on the importance of accurate representation of women in peace building field, activism, and policy making. So at the end of the webinar, also, they will provide insights from on how they have encountered the misrepresentation of women within their own peace building work. And also, they will be glad to share their recommendation at the end of the webinar. So on today's webinar, we will have 60 minutes, and we have agenda set for the webinar. We will start by introducing our team. Sarah will lead on that one. Then also our ambassadors will give us an insight about the overview of peace building. Then they'll cover the resolution 1325 by UN Security Council, and why they will talk about also why women's representation is really matter. And also a very interesting part of the webinar will be the current situation in South Africa and Brazil, and also what both of our ambassadors are doing to address this issue. Then finally, I will come back for a question and answer session. So just to remind you again, feel free to write in the chat box whenever you have a question or thoughts on this presentation, so that we can address it later in this webinar. So now I will give it to Sarah to introduce our team and also to give us a little bit highlights about our project, which is YP2LE. Sarah.
Thanks, Efrem, and it's great to be here with everyone. I'm joined by colleagues Cole and Gloria. It's great to see Efrem and our 2 YouthLead ambassadors here this morning. I'm really looking forward to this presentation. Just to give you a sense, we have a pretty big team here at YP2LE that support YouthLead and our Youth Ambassador program. I'm Sarah, I'm a Senior Youth Engagement Advisor for YP2LE, but we are overseen by Christy Scott, our Director. And as you can see on the screen, there are quite a few of us. You may know a few of these folks who you've connected to through YouthLead, but we do encourage you to reach out and get in touch with our team. Before we dive into this morning's webinar, I wanted to share a little bit more background about what Youth Power 2 Learning and Evaluation, or YP2LE for short, is all about, and our connection to YouthLead and the Ambassador Program. So Youth Power is a USAID funding mechanism. It's a funding source for youth-focused programs on evaluation and research. And the goal of YP2LE is to generate knowledge and promote learning on positive youth development, or PYD. If you're not familiar with PYD, this is a holistic framework for youth development that assumes that all young people have assets that should be invested in through inclusion, access, education, and training. The framework also promotes youth agency, and this can be best supported by an enabling environment for young people. By enabling environment, we mean strong networks like the YouthLead Ambassador Program. We mean supportive adults, teachers, parents, We are talking about youth-friendly services and resources, so services that are accessible to young people, and also youth-friendly policies. We know that there is a whole ecosystem that surrounds all of us. And when you're a young person, we rely on different people and institutions to support us. And the policies that underpin those institutions and services are so critical. And I think we'll probably be exploring a little bit of that through today's focus on peace building. So I wanted just to give you a sense of how we think about youth development. It's holistic, it's part of a system, and the ways that the Youth Power 2 Learning and Evaluation program are really designed to support all of that. Our YouthLead.org platform is focused on serving young changemakers like many of you. We also have another platform called youthpower.org, and this is focused on specifically supporting youth serving organizations or international organizations. And together, these two platforms really help promote learning, research, events, information about positive youth development and about youth development more broadly. I'm going to let Ephraim say more about the YouthLead platform and talk about some of the ways you can use that platform in your own work as young changemakers. But I also want to just congratulate Anita and Fernanda again on putting together today's session. I'm really excited about this topic and look forward to hearing their presentations. Congrats to you both for this campaign.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So Sarah mentioned a little bit about the overview of the YP2LE project, and one part of that project is the YouthLead.org. Cole will help me drop the link to the chat box. So YouthLead.org was launched in 2018 at the World Bank Youth Summit, and today it includes more than 12,000 members from around the world. And this is a huge platform, like a global platform for young people aged between 15 and 35, who are working for positive change and impacting in their communities in different ways. Could be as advocates, activists, volunteers, or entrepreneurs. So any young change maker can join the site by creating a profile. It's very simple, but also it needs some time. Once you apply to get access to the site, you will wait for 48 hours, then you'll get access to the site. And the site is a hub, and it comes with many opportunities for young leaders. So the picture that you are seeing on the screen now is part of our current YouthLead ambassadors. So they're representing different parts of the world. They're representing more than 20 countries from different continents. They're amazing leaders, and also this is a third cohort program. So for this program, more than 3,000 young changemakers applied, and we have selected 22 young changemakers as a YouthLead ambassador. And the ambassadors are actually sharing information about YouthLead within their network. Also, they will help the site by increasing engagement and by creating different discussion groups, social media engagements, and also like now they're sharing their experience through webinars. So this for the current, which is the third cohort of YouthLead ambassadors, this is the eighth series of webinars led by two of our YouthLead ambassadors. So today, like I mentioned before, our speakers are from South Africa, Anita from South Africa and Maria from Brazil. So I'll give a very brief bio about both of them, then we proceed to the webinar presentation. So first I'll introduce Fernanda. Fernanda is currently a YouthLead ambassador for the YP2LE program from Brazil. She is undergraduate law student of the Federal University of Ceará and human rights researcher focusing on gender, democracy, and rule of law in Latin America. Beyond that, she is the general coordinator of Voz Nelas Foreza, a project aimed to increase female representation in local politics. A volunteer, she's also a volunteer at Isaac and part of a meditation and conciliation nucleus of the Faculty of Law, which provides population-free access to justice and peace. She advocates for SDG number 5, 16, 17. Fernanda also will tell us what she's doing to address this issue later on the presentation. And our second speaker is Anita from South Africa. She's also a YouthLead ambassador. She's currently studying for her postgraduate degree in Rhodes University in journalism and media studies. Anita is a founding member of the nonprofit called Nukuwenkuzimpo. She told me that this means a shining star and serves as a sub-Saharan ambassador to Peace First, which is also another project where she is engaged. Anita is part of the South African Institute for International Affairs, and a short version, SAI, a youth policy committee evaluating policies relating to gender, peace and security, and inequalities and racism. Anita was the lead of the Peace and Security Thematic Group Youth Submission Report. Lastly, she also has a podcast called Let's Talk Activism. Later on, she'll share us a little bit about this podcast also. So with that, I'll give it to our youth speakers today, and I wish everyone to enjoy the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ephraim.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Ephraim, for that beautiful introduction. So thank you to our participants for joining us. We truly appreciate this, and we hope you will enjoy this presentation just as much as we enjoyed making it. And I look forward to engaging. So please do send your comments on the chat box and for the Q&A session at the end. So we'll start off by briefly giving an overview on what peace building is. So before we speak about why representation matters in peace building, we need to understand what peace building is, so we can lead to why representation matters. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is peace building? So we have two definitions. One is by International Alert, and the other is from UN peacekeeping. So sorry, I forgot to start my video. Okay. So peace building is about dealing with reasons why people fight in the first place, and it supports societies to manage their differences and conflicts without resorting to violence. And the definition by UN peacekeeping says that peace building aims to reduce the risk of lapsing and relapsing into conflict by strengthening national capacities at all levels of conflict management and to lay the foundation for sustainable peace and development. So all in all, peace building aims to prevent the outbreak, escalation, continuation, and recurrence of violence. So peace building takes place before, during, and after the conflict. So we need to also note that peace building is a long-term process and is a collaborative process, and it involves changes in attitude, behaviors, and norms. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So I'll be talking about the UN Security Council Resolution 1325. This resolution was adopted on the 31st of October 2000 by the UN Security Council. This resolution affirms the important role of women in the prevention and resolution of conflicts, peace negotiation, peace building, peacekeeping, humanitarian response, and post-conflict reconstruction, and stresses the importance for women's equal participation and full involvement in all maintenance and promotion of peace and security. The resolution specifically addresses how women and girls are disproportionately impacted by violence, conflict, and war, and recognizes the critical role that women can and already do play in peace-building efforts. However, despite this resolution, women in major peace processes constituted on average 14% of negotiators over the period of 2015 and 2019. And also on average constituted 11% of mediators over the period of 2015 and 2019, and 7% of signatories over the same period. So as much as this resolution was adopted in about 10 years back, or 12 years back, the resolution has not been effective and has not adequately transformed women participation in peace building quite fast enough. Next slide, please. I would end off this overview with a quote by Malala Yousafzai. I am pretty sure many of you are familiar with her work and familiar with her story. So the quote goes as follows: "No struggle can ever succeed without women participating side by side with men. There are two powers in the world. One is the sword, one is the pen, and the third, stronger than both, is that of women." I chose this quote because it further drives the point that women need to be part and parcel in peacekeeping and peace building processes. And it also relates back to the fundamental definition of peace building, which is a collaborative process. So men alone cannot be at the forefront of peace building, but men and women need to be a part and parcel in driving peace building efforts in the global sense. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I couldn't be happier being here with you talking about this such important topic. And now that we know what is peace building, and we know that it's not just the conflict zone, we need to understand why women's representation in peace building matters. Next slide, please. According to Harvard Kennedy School, with representatives in leadership positions, ordinary women become more inspired to engage in political and civic discussions. So when we have women occupying spaces, women in politics, women in decision-making positions, ordinary women become empowered to occupy more and more spaces. Beyond that, according to the United States Institute of Peace, women participants in peace process are usually focused less on post-conflict balances of power and more on reconciliation process, economic development, education, and transitional justice, which are all critical elements of sustainable peace. So having women participating on those processes, beyond inspiring more women to become empowered and acting to solve those problems, we can see that women think more about resolution and lasting peace more than balancing power, reconstructing the structural government, but caring about people humanitarian aid. Beyond that, according to the United Nations Women, the UN Women, the presence of male peacekeepers in marketplaces and in areas where women go to gather firewood has been shown to prevent cases of sexual and gender-based violence. The inclusion of women in peace mission is also known to result in increased reporting of conflict-related sexual violence. So beyond inspiring women, beyond caring about humanitarian aid, having women participating in peace process is a way to avoid sexual violence in conflict zone and other cases that we're going to talk later during this presentation. So this is an overview of some points that why representation matters in a global perspective. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk about the current situation of peace building, peace missions, and the political structure involving the peace process in a global sphere about South Africa and Brazil. Next slide, please. So talking about a global atmosphere of factors that contribute to gender disparity in peace building. First, we have a lack of resources, such as a lack of access to employment opportunities and to productive assets such as land, capital, health service, training, and education. We also have the prevalence of rape and sexual assault, as in Rwanda, Bosnia, and Kashmir. This form of abuse generates fear and helps to silence campaigns for social, economic, and political rights. Beyond that, gender disparity in political, humanitarian, social decision-making positions, and women are still primarily seen as victims of conflict, as opposed to predators or agents of change, which means their responses mostly deal with aspects of sexual and gender-based violence. So in an overview about it, we can notice that there's a lack of resources, the prevalence of rape and sexual assault, political, humanitarian, social decision-making positions that we barely don't see women occupying those spaces, And women are still primarily seen as victims of conflict. We are not seen as people capable of making a change and providing providing help to change this reality. Next slide, please.
So I'm going to touch on the situation in South Africa. So as much as in South Africa, we do not have an active war going on, we do have quite a lot of conflict situations, such as service delivery protests. These service delivery protests have their genesis in corruption, maladministration, and so on and so forth, and just generally bad governance. We have issues in xenophobia, police brutality, and one thing that I really want to touch on is the gang violence on the Cape Flats. I am from the Cape Flats. So the reason why I want to focus on gang violence on the Cape Flats is because, especially speaking to this topic of women and their role in conflict and in violence. So a lot of the times when it comes to journalism, when it comes to research and academia, the focus when it comes to gang violence on the Cape Flats is often very masculine. So if you look online for documentaries, for articles about gang violence on the Cape Flats, it's often male-centered. And sometimes when I speak about female gangs on the Cape Flats, a lot of people are not aware of such because of the framing of gang violence on the Cape Flats. So this poses a particular problem because women are forgotten when it's time to rehabilitate these gangs, and they are often sexually victimized by rival gangs, especially male gangsters, and as well as police in some cases. So women are forgotten when we're speaking about violence and conflict, because for some reason we have created this ideology that violence and war and crime is male and is masculine. So women are invisible in those circumstances. Next slide, please.
So talking a little bit about the situation in Brazil. Unfortunately, me and Anita, when we were preparing the presentation, we noticed that we have pretty similar problems in our countries. So I decided to focus on different issues that she talked. You know, even though we have problems just similar to what Anita just said. So the situation in Brazil. We have the worst rates of female participation in politics in Latin America. And it's important to notice that Latin America is not a reference of female participation in politics. So even though the entire region faces difficult time concerning women's participation, women's rights concerning politics, we have the worst rates. And one of the most violent places in the world for women outside the war zone. So even though we do not live in a concrete war, we have the worst rates, the worst cases of sexual assault, femicide in the entire world. And we are also facing a political crisis. Concerning the political crisis is hard to explain when it started because it's something that was always present. And the situation is more complex when we join the political crisis with the another topic, war on drugs, police brutality, and structural racism. Brazil is an extremely racist country, and we can have a clear vision of the situation when we look on the war on drugs. You may be asking, what is war on drugs? War on drugs is a term used by the police, the politicians, to talk about the police brutality and less fortunate communities, especially the favelas, to try to fight against the drug dealing problem. But the truth is that what is going on is that the police is killing Black people, Black young people, Black women in the poorest regions of Brazil. And we are now studying it as a genocide, which is happening especially in Rio. And beyond that, one rape reported every 11 minutes and one femicide reported every 7 hours. So even we are beyond having this political crisis, the police brutality, structural racism, we still faces an extremely difficult situation concerning women's rights, security, and we need to think, how can we want women to participate in politics? How can we empower women to see themselves as capable of making a change when we are afraid of living? We don't know if we're going to survive another day in Brazil. I brought three pictures, and this one says, justice for João Pedro. He was a young boy that was murdered by the police. He was 11 years old, I guess. He was a Black kid living in a poor region of Brazil. And I was trying to find another photo of this protest because he was murdered by the police and we didn't even know where his body was. And there was a picture saying that we have George Floyd every day in Brazil. So you can understand the situation. And even though we're not living in a concrete war zone, we still live in a war. In the third picture, we have two kids raising and saying, less bullet, more love. And in the picture in the middle, we have an image of Rio de Janeiro. And this woman, she is acting like she's the Jesus Christ, the monumental we have in Rio. And her name is Marielle Franco. And she was a politician, a Brazilian politician. She was fighting against the federal military intervention in Rio, the one that killed a lot of people, a lot of innocent people in the name of war on drugs and because of the political crisis. So everything is connected. And what I wanted to show is that it's difficult to make those people join the movement and fight for a more equal world. Like, how can we want kids to perpetuate peace when all they see is the situation? Next slide, please.
I think we skipped a slide. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. This is a phrase from Marielle, the one I show on the last picture. And she said, how many others will have to die for this war to end? The war she's referring to is the war on drugs, especially in Rio. And it's interesting to notice that she said this phrase 2 days before she was murdered. She was murdered because of the fact that she was fighting against the military intervention in Rio, and it was a political crime. So I wanted to bring this phrase because it's important to understand that this is a very structural problem that we are facing in Brazil. So she was a politician. She was a Black woman, a Black politician, a lesbian Black politician in a country like Brazil, in a city like Rio. And she was trying to do what we are talking here. She was trying to change Rio, change Brazil, and bring peace to our lives, to our daily lives. And she was murdered because of it. So the insight that I would like to leave here is, how can we change this situation? How can we change this entire system if we barely don't know how to do it, because it's such a structural and systematic problem that we are afraid to try to change and being murdered, just like Marielle.
So I'm pretty sure many of you are quite familiar with this picture. The woman in the white clothes is Ala Salah. She's a Sudanese student and an anti-government protester. She gained worldwide media attention from this picture, which was taken during the 2018-2019 Sudanese revolution, and this picture went viral. This picture is often dubbed as the woman in white or Lady Liberty of Sudan. Salah is a member of Mansam, which is one of the main Sudanese women's networks that signed the January 1st, 2019 Forces of Freedom and Change Declaration. So as I was analyzing this picture, it's obviously very symbolic, especially relating to the topic women in peace building. And as I was analyzing this picture, obviously it's incredible that she could stand in front of a crowd, addressing a crowd, being a woman wearing a hijab and all. So yeah, so as I was analyzing the picture, and I just realized that most of the people that I'm seeing, part of the crowd, are women. So I don't think this is something that I realized before I was doing before this presentation, because I've seen this picture quite a number of times on social media, but I hadn't noticed that the crowd she was addressing is a crowd of women. And this is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about the invisibility of women when it comes to leading peace building efforts, when it comes to leading revolutions. And it reminded me of a documentary and a story that I was watching online about the Egyptian revolution in 2019, where women were part of the revolution. Women were at the forefront of the revolution, but they were, when it came to media attention and it came to the framing of the story, women are invisible. They are nowhere to be found. And it also goes back to a lot of other situations where conflict and violence and revolutions and leadership is involved. The picture we get is always a male picture. It's never a female picture, even though women were at the forefront of, fighting for that revolution or against whatever the injustice was. And it got me thinking about, even in the South African context, during the apartheid years and the revolution leading up to the releasing of Nelson Mandela and the declaration of a democratic South Africa. Women were part of the revolution, but on the forefront, when we're talking about apartheid, we think about Nelson Mandela, we think about all the other apartheid leaders, or the Black leaders who are driving who are leading the movement. We think about male figures and we never think about women. And this is exactly what we are trying to prove. Women are part and parcel of men leading the revolutions, leading the protests, but they're often invisible when it comes to reporting, when it comes to academia, and when it comes to just framing of revolutions and violence and all of that stuff. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about our own peace projects. Fernanda will speak about the project that she is leading in her own capacity, and I will speak about the projects that I am leading in my own capacity. Next slide, please.
So, as I said, in Brazil we face a very structural problem, and last year I started a project in my city called Vote Nelas Fortaleza, or in English, Vote for Her Fortaleza, to increase female participation in local politics. Actually, the program, the Vote for Her program, started in São Paulo in a national level in 2015, but it became more famous and gained more strength in 2018 after the murder of Marielle Franco, because we saw that we needed to join our forces to change this reality and avoid that other women face what Marielle faced when she was alive and after what happened with her. So the project became a national and more inclusive project. We are present in more than 100 cities in Brazil. And the idea is to empower women to see themselves as political forces, to join the active pole and the passive pole of the political system. So we engage young girls to see themselves as capable of making a change, capable of speaking for themselves, and capable of demanding their own rights. And we also act with the politicians or the women trying to become politicians to show them that they are not alone, that we support their journey, and try to put more women in the elected seats. So here in Fortaleza, my city, we work during 8 months and now we are replanning our activities for the next elections that are going to happen the next year. And we work with approximately 15 candidates for the legislative seats in my city. And it was such an amazing journey, having the opportunity to show those women that they are not alone, that we are here to support them, and that we, even with the differences, the different ideologies, we have the same goal: to save girls, to change the reality, to reduce the femicide rates in Brazil. So it was an amazing initiative to show that girls and women can participate in politics. More than can, we should participate in politics. Next slide, please.
Okay, so the projects that I have been a part of, there are three main projects speaking to peace building and peace and security. The first project was the South African APRM Popular Sanitation Project, which is an African Union initiative, and I was part of it through the South African Institute of International Affairs, and I was leading the peace and security group. So what we were doing, part of SAPS, is we were monitoring and evaluating policies in South Africa. So we were looking at current legislation. So what is the legislation dealing with peace and security? And we were dealing with peace and security in all levels. So from the crime, from the femicide, from the gender-based violence, from constitutionalism, from corruption, because it's all a culmination of the same thing. It all stems from the same thing, or it all produces the same results, which is political instability and peace and security issues on the ground. So we were monitoring and evaluating policy and legislation, and we compiled a report. My peace and security group, we were focusing on constitutionalism, corruption, and state capture. So we looked at the legislation and see where it was fully effectively addressing the issues that are present in South Africa, and where it was failing, and we provided recommendations, and that all was consolidated into a single report, and that was given to members of the national government to review and to overlook. And the second peace project that I'm leading is Peace First. I'm a Peace First ambassador. And what we have been doing through Peace First is we have been hosting hackathons and peace labs. So we're teaching young peace builders like myself, and in the whole sub-Saharan Africa, so peace builders from peacekeepers from all regions in sub-Saharan Africa. So we teach them how to apply for grants through Peace First, and how to fully become peacekeepers and peace builders. So through Nkwenkwezi NPO, which is an organization that I am a founding member of, is we deal mostly with education, but one of our primary aims is to get the kids off the streets, because we're dealing with a primary school called Injongo Primary School, and usually what the gangs would do is they would recruit learners in that age range. I know it's quite absurd, but we have learners who are 13, 14, parts of gangs. That's when they recruit them. So we try to get them off the streets, and we provide tutoring services for them. And at the same time, we provide extracurricular support. So we have, games and dancing and poetry clubs and all of that to get them off the streets. And we also give them meals for the day, because a lot of them come from very disadvantaged households, and they do not, some of them do not know where their next meal will come from. So that's what we do as Nkwenkwezi NPO. So yeah, those are my peace building projects. And yeah, I try to be quite vast in where I can with my projects, because I felt like it wasn't enough for me to just be on the local grassroots level. I thought it's important, especially for me being a woman and being from the community that is most affected by, peace and security. It was quite important for me to be a part of, policy and and be on that policy level when it comes to issues relating to peace and security, because who else knows, peace and security problems like the person who comes from, that community? Because a lot of the time we have people who are not part of, our community, who have not lived and seen the things that we have seen in our communities, advocating and drafting policies that they do not know how they impact people on the ground. So yeah, those are my projects. And yeah, next slide, please.
We have some recommendations for you to get more about the topic of female participation in peacebuilding. So next slide, please. The first recommendation is the free online courses from Online Peacekeeping Training Institute. Everyone can participate in those courses. They are amazing, and they are totally free, and you can get your certificate by concluding your course. And I truly recommend it. I did like a lot of courses, and it was an amazing experience for me.
So for the recommendations, there are free online courses online from various institutes and various organizations dealing with peacekeeping and peace building. And I feel like it's quite important for us to educate ourselves on that level, because because I've done a couple of courses as well. A lot of the courses break down the issues relating to peacekeeping and peace and security at its most smallest. I can't there's an English word for it, but yeah. So, and there's a couple of articles and research papers that you can read online to educate yourself about women and why it is important for women to be a part of the peace building processes. And yeah, from my side, I believe that this is an issue that is very ideological. It's the reason why we don't have women as peace builders is because we think that conflict and war is male, and therefore obviously males would then be the leaders of peace building processes. So yeah, that's what those were our recommendations to try to help with having women being a part of the peace building processes.
Thank you very much, both of you, Anita and Fernanda. I just want to echo what Anita said a few minutes before. I just wrote down that line from you, Anita. So it goes like, I try to quite get lost in as much as projects to bring change in peace building. If it's not me, who else? So I think that's a very powerful line for young people out there who really cares about peace building, and also how we can bring inclusivity of women into this issue. So we have learned a lot, and it was a great insight. And we've seen a lot of engagement on Facebook Live and also here in the Zoom call. So we have a couple of questions. So we have around 10 minutes. So I'll just share 2 questions, then proceed to the next few more slides. So the first question was by Garnos. I think this question is for Anita, I would believe. He said, any lessons from your practice, in quotation, peace and security versus xenophobia? So that was the first question. Any lesson from your practice on peace and security versus xenophobia? So the other one is from Cameroon. From Cameroon, BTME just shared the question, what are the mechanisms, what is the mechanism put in place by both South African and Brazilian government to fight against violences on women? And what are you proposing as a young leader in other to improve this situation? So generally the question of what government is doing, and also what do you propose? I know you've put some recommendations, but also if you have anything more, you can share. So I'll give both of you 2 minutes to answer these questions. I know Maria is having some internet issues, but so I'll give it to Anita first. Then if Maria can connect her audio, then we can go to her also. Thanks, Anita.
Okay, great. So I'll address the first question about the mechanisms put in place by the South African government to fight against violence against women. So on a policy level, there are various policies and that are in place in order to fight GBV, gender-based violence, and all. But a lot of the policies don't adequately address the issues. So this is why that APRM initiative that I was part of was so important, because when you're monitoring and evaluating policy, you see where the gaps are. So there are, very nice laws in place, very nice policies in place. I know we have a policy now that a person who sees or witnesses, gender-based violence, they're supposed to report it. They are required by law to report it, and if they fail to report it, they have a criminal. They have gone against the law. But you have these nice policies, and then you have the situation on the ground, and there's a gap that exists between the policy and the situation on the ground. So I think the issue is ideological. So if we stop seeing women as subordinate to men, then we can, that's a step forward in addressing gender-based violence and femicide. Because, I mean, if you're going to the police, look, how I see it is the people who are supposed to be implementing the policies are people who are part of the very same society. We are trying to fix. Do you get what I mean? So if the person who you're reporting the crime to is a person who also has the same mentality that women are subordinate to men, then this is why that gap is there, because they don't fully solve the case, or they don't fully address the issue the way they're supposed to, or the way they're required by law to, because they also have these mentality, they have these ideologies that women are subordinate to men. So I think at its very lowest level, we need to address like the ideological problems that is in existence in society, especially in South Africa. We have one of the highest gender-based violence and femicide rates in the world. So yeah.
About a question concerning the Brazilian actions provided by the government to fight against violence on women. On a political level, we have quotas for female candidates in political parties. So 30% of the party candidates must be women. But even though we have this mechanism, it is important to notice that we face a problem that is the fake candidates. We call it orange candidates. And as we have this quota, the parties just put random women to pretend they're candidates, but they're not real candidates. So even we have 30% of the candidates women, we only have 10% of the elected politicians representing women, such as trans women and cis women. And about gender-based violence and, for example, rape and domestic violence, we have the law are very strict, but impunity and the fear of the stigma of being a victim of violence in Brazil is bigger, because it is still a huge taboo here in Brazil, talking about rape, domestic violence, and things like that. So we have a lot of laws about it, including one that is referenced in the world called Maria da Penha Law. She was a Brazilian woman that her husband tried to kill her 3 times, and she went to the international court to fight for her rights. And because of her braveness, we have now a very good law, but the impunity in Brazil is terrible. And even when women try to fight for their rights and sue their predators, they are still seen as the guilty ones, as like if they could do something to change what happened to them. So the most cases of rape in Brazil are not notified. And the femicide, I show you guys that the rates of femicide in Brazil are huge, but most cases of femicide are not investigated as femicide. So we believe that the situation is much more worse than what we think it is.
Well, thank you very much, both of you. I think we have a few minutes to share few more slides. And I saw also a question from Jane, and we will address this one on social media chat. So Anita and Maria will have also social media chat about this, and also they will have a discussion group on our YouthLead.org site to discuss more about these questions. I saw one more question. We can discuss that one on the social media chat. Well, we've learned a lot today, and also I've learned that if youth can take action to bring the necessary change, just like by using voice, like vote Nela's or vote for her, or it can be by designing a project like Anita with children and youth in the extracurricular setting, which is off the streets. So I think if youth really wants to make a change, they can start from grassroots, and also they can go to even on a policy level and impact. So thank you very much, both of you. And now I'll just give it to Sarah to share with us our new youth mentorship page. I'll give you Sarah now for 2 minutes or 3 minutes to talk about this opportunity. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Fernanda and Anita. This was a really excellent presentation, and I appreciate all the work that you did to put this together and for speaking about these issues from your home countries. I wanted to highlight two things about the YouthLead platform that we didn't mention at the start of this webinar. And the first is that I'm very excited to share we have a newly launched mentorship initiative page on YouthLead.org. It lives under our initiatives tab in the search bar. And the mentorship initiative is a space on the YouthLead platform for a dedicated focus on topics related to mentorship. And so if you visit this page, you'll be able to sort of navigate through what's available to you here. The focus is on helping our change makers develop your skills as mentors. It's also focused on how to help you find and grow and develop healthy mentorship relationships. There's an opportunity for you to connect and network with YouthLead members on topics related to mentorship, as well as professional skill building. And we wanted to make it easier for our members to find mentorship programs and networks to help you support your professional growth as young change makers. So we're really excited to launch this page. It is a soft launch. We are planning for a formal launch event at the end of this month on July 30th. But I just wanted to share my screen and give you a sense of what's here. On the homepage, you'll be able to navigate to mentorship resources, a discussion group on the YouthLead platform, and we're also recruiting partners. These are existing mentorship programs and youth serving organizations that have an established mentorship component to their programs. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. The homepage will have a section for featured content, events. We'll have video interviews with some of our peer advisors and our YAG member, Edna Tukiko, who's been helping us lead this initiative. And there's some more information here as well about how you as members of YouthLead can help us grow this initiative. We really want you to share your feedback with us about this page. It's newly launched, so having fresh eyes on the page to help us know how we can strengthen and improve it, make information easier to find, add content. That's all really, really helpful feedback to us. If you'd like to share resources, you can upload mentorship-focused topics to the website yourself, or you can share them with our team. And if you've participated in a mentorship program or network that you found really powerful, that really helped you on your professional journey, we'd love to know about them, especially from your home country. We welcome different languages, but we're really looking to build this initiative out with your help as young change makers on the platform. So on our resources page, you can search for resources by different categories. And these are here. So being a mentor, finding a mentor, learning about concepts of mentorship. How do we design it, build it into our programs? What does it look like? And then a list of mentorship programs. And so down here, you'll see what we're starting to build out. We really want this to be a directory for our YouthLead members to help you find programs that can support you. So I really invite you to go and check out the page and explore further. And then, as I mentioned, we are looking for partners to support the page. So we will have a partner page on the platform. And again, we're looking for established mentorship organizations or organizations with a robust mentorship program as part of their youth development services. And ideally networks of mentors who are willing to help support and contribute content, learning events, training for members of our network. So we're really excited to get this off the ground. And I wanted to highlight it for all of you here today so that you're aware and you can start to explore the page and give us some feedback on what you think and how we can strengthen it. I also wanted just to highlight another initiative on the YouthLead platform today. We have talked a lot in this webinar about gender-based violence, violence against women. These are really difficult topics. And we have a page on YouthLead that is really focused on health. And I wanted just to flag this for you because if you are looking for resources or information related to GBV or other topics, there are resources on YouthLead for you to consider about safe spaces, about mental health, and about activism against gender-based violence. So again, YouthLead is here for you. It's a source of resources, information, and learning events, and we're continuing to build the platform, but we really want our YouthLead change makers and members to help be part of that process because it's meant for you. So we want to know how we can improve it. So I will stop there. If you have any questions about the mentorship initiative or YouthLead in general, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat box or our team, and we can respond to you. So thanks for letting me jump in at the end here, Ephraim. And thank you so much again to Anita and Fernanda. This was an excellent presentation. I'm just really impressed.
Thank you very much for Sarah for sharing this new opportunity. I've dropped some links which Sarah was describing, the mentorship page, and also some of the initiatives that we have on YouthLead. Please check on the chat box. So I'll just share the upcoming webinars and also how you can join YouthLead next up. So thank you very much again. So in the next, we have 2 more webinars with our ambassadors, which will be on July 9th and July 16th. So that would be the 9th and the 10th of the webinar. As you can see, we have the next week we have by 2 of our ambassadors, one of our ambassadors and the other one is a young member. They will be talking about the role of youth in promoting sustainable agriculture development. And after that, we have the last webinar for this cohort of ambassadors, which will be on future of work for young people. So they will talk about social entrepreneurship and soft skills. David and Christian are also our ambassadors. So you can sign up for this webinar also by just going to the youthlead.org, and under events, YouthLead events, you'll find those registration links, and also on our social media, you can find the link to sign up. So thank you. We want to also thank our various sponsors who are promoting YouthLead to their networks and contributory resources, events, and other various funding opportunities. So once you sign up to the site, you can see our sponsors, our funding opportunities by other organizations also. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, our YP2LE team, Sarah, Colin, Gloria, and our audience, both on Facebook and Zoom, and also our amazing YouthLead ambassadors today. We really thank you. And I've seen audiences from different parts of the world, and just mention some: Bangladesh, Liberia, Cameroon, Brazil, USA, Tanzania, Kenya, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Togo, Jamaica, South Sudan, it goes on. So thank you. Please check again for the upcoming webinar announcements, and also the recording and the slides of today's webinar will be available on youthlead.org. So make sure to visit after 2 or 3 days to get all these resources. So with that, we hope to see you next time. And until then, please stay safe and have a great time. Thank you. Bye-bye.